don't throw darts at a board. I bet on sure things. Read Sun Tzu, The Art of War. Every battle is won before it's ever fought. Think about it. The most valuable commodity I know of is information. Wouldn't you agree?
I gotta pump those numbers up. Those are rookie numbers in this racket.
A, B, C. A always B, B, C closing. Always be closing. Always be closing. The show goes on!
It's Wednesday night and fantasy football is on the agenda. Grab a seat and let's get down to business. It's time for the Fantasy Boardroom. Here's your host, Tycoon.
And welcome to the Fantasy Boardroom. I am your host and fantasy CEO, Tycoon. Very excited to bring you a very special episode this evening. Today we are going to go over some NFC East wide receivers, and I have a very special guest with me. I have with me Billy Mustafa, Dynasty Bill of the Dial Up the Blitz podcast, and of Fantasy and Frames. So with that, we're going to welcome him in. Billy, how are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you? How are you doing?
Doing absolutely outstanding on a Wednesday.
That's what we want to hear.
And thrilled to have you here. So I'm going to let everybody here know our friend Billy is joining us from the United Kingdom. It is, close to 2:30 a.m. his time. So once again, he is doing just an incredible favor for the boardroom. Can't thank you enough.
Yeah, no problem. A couple of coffees in, so I should be all right.
Whatever it takes.
Exactly.
I mean, better than what they got to do in the NFL. At least we're not shoving a needle in you to keep you going. Oh, whoops. Maybe I shouldn't say that if I want to go anywhere covering this league. But yeah, we have Billy here today. We are going to cover the NFC Beast receivers. It's a division that's just absolutely loaded with high-end wide receiver talent, rookies, veterans, young players alike. So there's a lot to discuss here, a lot to dissect here, a lot of varying opinion here. So we're going to jump right into it. We're going to go over a bit of a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats that are facing, I guess, the notable receivers on each team, generally the top two of each team, and decide where we want to go with these particular players for the upcoming season and take a little dynasty outlook as well. And then from there, we will do a quick little market update, some fantasy relevant headlines, then we'll get you guys the heck out of here. So before we jump in, anything you want to preface before we jump into the Washington football team?
I mean, apart from my undying love for Scary Terry, nothing apart from that, but know that it's going to be a completely biased take. I love that dude.
He's got to be one of the most likable players in the league, period. I mean,
yeah.
Last week, went over some incoming rookies. One of the guys we talked about was Travis Etienne. My guest, Rumboys Robbie, when discussing that, we kept veering back to James Robinson discussion, and I think Terry's kind of a similar mold as to why you root for him. James Robinson, undrafted underdog, just a great story, a guy that's easy to root for. And while Terry obviously wasn't undrafted, I don't think many of us had huge hopes for him coming out of Ohio State. At least, I don't think many saw star. We saw probably better real-life player than fantasy player in particular. So it's so much fun to root for this guy.
Yeah, I think that's it exactly. I think anyone that watched him at Ohio State, they saw that the boy, he had talent. You knew that he was a baller, but you just wondered how much of an opportunity he'd get in the NFL, and if he would be able to land somewhere that would give him a path to become the Terry McLaurin that we know now. Right. Luckily for him, he landed on a Washington team that needed some receiving talent, and he was given every opportunity to go and prove that he could be a one in this league. And I'm glad that was the case.
He absolutely maximized that opportunity he was given. Just thank goodness for all of us. So just high level overview here of the Washington receiving situation. So looking at it from a SWOT perspective. So strengths, obviously we have a couple of talented, higher profile guys in Terry, and also Curtis Samuel, newest addition. strength now may also be considered quarterback. You could view Fitzpatrick as an upgrade. We're going to get into that a little bit more later, but that is a subjective thing that many do view as an upgrade, or now a strength, at least for the receivers. As far as weaknesses go, well, we can go back to Fitzpatrick. Others view him as a weakness, not necessarily an upgrade from previous years. I think that's a little hard to argue, but I think it's fair to not necessarily view him as a strength.
Yeah, I think he's very feast or famine, isn't he?
Absolutely. I mean, Fitzmagic and Fitztragic.
That's it. Exactly that. Yeah, as a Bills fan, I'm well aware of both sides of Fitz.
Oh, yes. Some of the best and worst moments were in Buffalo.
Yeah, they were.
But that's where most of us, I think, fell in love with the guy.
Well, I did for sure.
And as far as opportunities go, there's, I'd say, limited wide receiver skill on that roster still. I think it really does boil down to those top two. I mean, there's other, again, guys that might be better in real life for fantasy, or just maybe effective football players, but not maybe great, talented pass catching receivers. So the opportunity is going to be there. Really, their competition is going to come from out of the backfield for these two guys as far as targets go.
I think their competition really is Logan Thomas and Antonio Gibson.
Oh, yeah. Thomas too.
After that, I just don't see any real, outside of an injury, a way that any other wide receiver on that team is fantasy relevant in 2021. I think as the pass catchers go, it's Terry, it's Curtis Samuel, it's Logan Thomas, and I'm expecting Antonio Gibson to get maybe some more of that McKissick that he missed out on last year. I'm expecting him to hopefully, as a Gibson owner in a lot of leagues, I'm hoping that Ron Rivera gives him the Christian McCaffrey role, but let's see.
Oh, that's what we all hope. Yeah, he's Washington CMC. And I mean, I think it's virtually a sure thing he's going to absorb some of McKissick's target share. Now, how much did they keep McKissick involved, though, with Gibson? Obviously, he didn't really struggle in his rookie year, but dealt with getting a little banged up. So do they try and still keep somewhat of a decent split with McKissick so that way they don't run him into the ground? Or do they just unleash the horse? But that's a different discussion for a different day.
Yeah.
And then as far as threats go to the Washington football team, I would have to say, actually, I probably should have done a deeper dive into their schedule before this episode, but they do have, thankfully, oh no, I take that back. They're Washington football team, so they're the only team with a good defense in the division, so they're good to go. I don't think there's a whole lot of threats. Again, it actually all, to me, comes back to Fitzpatrick.
Yeah, I really think that's where this team, from a fantasy perspective, at least, are definitely gonna, we're gonna have some weeks where Terry and maybe even Curtis Samuel are going to be game winners, or game week winners. But there's going to be some weeks where Fitz throws 3 interceptions, can't get the ball to a guy in a Washington jersey, and it's just a mess. But I think overall, based on the whole season, we're going to see an upgrade in terms of fantasy production from the wide receivers because of Fitzpatrick compared to, check it down Alex Smith last year.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, it's kind of hard to view it as going anywhere but up in terms of quarterback play. So even if we get, 5-6 games of, bad Fitzpatrick, that's still a massive improvement over what we were seeing in terms of what the fantasy numbers should look like.
Yeah, for sure.
And we know that Fitz at times likes to lock into his top target, so that does bode well for Terry. I think it's a little overstated when you dive into the numbers, but he clearly does tend to favor a wide receiver one on his team.
Yeah, and I think Terry's good enough to deal with that. I think he's good enough for the defense to know that he's the guy they're going to. Fitz still go to him and him to still produce. I think Terry's good enough.
Oh, more than good enough. And now, and I'm curious with Samuel's arrival, now, while he's not obviously some big outside threat, a little bit more of a weapon, so to speak, and probably more uses out of the slot as a receiver, still having another legitimate pass catching threat out there with him should hopefully open things up a little bit more for him, in addition to the improved QB play.
Well, yeah, he's finally got some help.
Yeah, first time.
He's not had any help since he's been in Washington, and now they managed to draft a running back that looks like he's going to be a productive contributor. Logan Thomas seems to have finally broken out as a tight end as opposed to a quarterback playing tight end, and now they've gone and paid for a high end wide receiver too. So I'm looking forward to seeing that offense with Fitz under center and these added weapons that they've not had and Terry's not had to support him really.
Yeah, so am I. So then, time to kind of put you on the spot with that. So in redraft, and Terry, where would you have him pegged right now? Looking at 2021.
I mean, I think he's going to be either just outside or just inside that wide receiver 1. I think I could see him being wide receiver 12. I could see him being wide receiver 14, 15. I think he's going to be around there. I definitely think he's going to get an uptick with Fitzpatrick. So yeah, I mean, I would be confident taking him into a season as my wide receiver 1 if I've gone RB heavy early. I've got no issue with that. Obviously, it's a little bit different in Dynasty. You've got to take him a little bit earlier. But yeah, for redraft, I could roll with Scary Terry as my wide receiver 1 if I've gone RB heavy early.
I'm not too far off from you. If I've pounded RB early, maybe my first 3 picks, I'd be okay with Terry as my wide receiver 1. Ideally, number 2. I mean, we're kind of getting a little nitpicky here, but I would probably have him closer to the 17 to 20 range for 2021. And that's nothing to do really with Terry. We just have an amazing gourd of receiving talent in this league, some that also received improved situations. And from a redraft perspective, the ceiling is there for so many guys that it's hard for me to really squeeze them into the top 15. Now, as a qualifier, though, I think the difference between 12 and 24 is going to be pretty minute, 2-3 points a game, maybe. So we're not talking about a massive difference. And if he does end up as a wide receiver 1 on your team, you will be fine. But I would target to try to make him your 2 if possible.
Yeah, I mean, if you can get Scary Terry as your wide receiver 2 and a guy, like a Devontae Adams or Stephon Diggs as your wide receiver 1, as well as a decent sort of running back tandem, then you're really cooking with gas.
Oh, 100%. And dynasty-wise, you already alluded, you'd probably take him a little bit earlier than you would in redraft. I would do the same. I probably have him dynasty-wise ranked around your redraft tier. I'd say right at the end of the WR1 tier. So 11, 12, 13, somewhere in there.
Yeah, I'm pretty similar with dynasty. I've definitely got him as a wide receiver 1, maybe a little bit higher than you. I did preface this by saying that I'm really high on Scary Terry. I'm trying to get him everywhere, trying to get him in all the leagues that I haven't already. I think in dynasty for me, he's maybe a top 10 wide receiver. He's a guy I'm targeting hard. He's a guy I really want. I think Fitz helps in this year, but I also think this is a team that are going to be looking to upgrade that quarterback position. They've got a really good defense. They're building the pieces around the offense. Realistically, they're probably a good quarterback away from being real contenders. And I think I'd like to be able to get Scary Terry at his price now, as opposed to his price when they do get their signal caller of the future.
That's hard to argue logic. And on the flip side, that's actually what gives me the hesitation and doesn't bump him into the top 10. I think talent-wise and other factors, youth included, he is a top 10 guy. I don't know that I have faith in the Washington football team, an organization run by Dan Snyder, to figure it out. He's had, how long is he on the team? 20-ish years. Plenty of time to figure it out. We still haven't seen it. So I guess it's one of those, I will believe it when I see it. So that gives me just that little bit of, I don't know.
He's got to be one of the only fantasy players or dynasty players that you're maybe a little bit apprehensive of because of his owner.
Oh,
in terms of the guy that owns the franchise, not the coach, not the quarterback.
No. Yeah, you have to go all the way to the top.
All the way to the top. And to be fair, you can't really argue Dan Snyder doesn't really know what he's doing, does he? He's a bit of a mess. But
Well, it's beyond even not knowing what he's doing. I mean, he's actively dysfunctional.
Yeah.
It's beyond just being. Again, another topic for another day.
Another day, yeah.
But he definitely he is a worry. So moving on from Terry for a minute, we'll go to Curtis Samuel. So as far as he goes, this time I'll lead. So as far as redraft goes, I do like him essentially as a matchup specific play is probably how I would deploy him most of the time, also depending on how many receivers you do need to deploy in your given league. He'll have a lot more usage in a 3 receiver league than a 2 receiver league, but I'd probably put him right there around the edge of that top 36. So I do think it's going to be, like many receivers in that range, really booms and busts. You just have to be able to pick your spots, but I do think he's going to have a good number of weeks that he'll put up a very valuable performance. Definitely top 36 regularly.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's a mid-level wide receiver 3, potentially a high-level wide receiver 3, depending on how efficient that Washington offense is. I kind of worry about the target share that Gibson's going to get. I think if that's going to hurt anyone, it was going to hurt Samuel's production more than it's going to hurt Terry's.
Yeah, totally agree.
But I had a lot of Samuel last year. I looked at it and I said, well, Robbie Anderson, DJ Moore, them guys are going to get all of the defense's his attention, and little Curtis Samuel's going to get forgotten about. And that kind of happened in a few games.
That's exactly what happened.
But I think it's hard to repeat that 2 years in a row. It's hard to repeat that on a new team. Wide receivers going to new teams don't often succeed straight away. I know last year was a bit of an outlier with DeAndre Hopkins and Stephon Diggs, but Samuel's not that level. He's not a wide receiver 1.
So you make the argument those guys are outliers as players, period. So
exactly, like they can go anywhere and ball out. I don't think Samuel is that level of talent.
Nope.
But I also like the fact he's back with Ron Rivera, and I like I said, I like what Washington have got going on there. So yeah, for me, mid-level wide receiver 3, definitely valuable in a 3 wide receiver league, or even if you've got a couple of flex spots, and like you said, matchup specific when he's playing the Dallas Cowboys and that awful defense. Stick him on the flex, and that's it. Exactly.
I can't get him in there fast enough twice against Dallas.
Exactly.
That's one of the reasons. I feel like you do have a couple of those games where you can absolutely slot him in. The Giants or Eagles are probably, really any division game.
Yeah, that's it. Any division
as
game.
far as fantasy goes.
Yeah.
And then from there, we've kind of reached the end of relevancy for Washington receivers. So with that, we're going to move on to one of the other pathetic NFC East teams that we brought up in the New York Giants. And they have a new shiny toy in Kenny Golladay, a guy who I'm noticing has been a bit polarizing lately in the fantasy community. And a guy I've actually started to change my mind about a little bit. But first, we'd like to get your thoughts here on the addition of Kenny Golladay to the Giants.
I think it's what they needed. I think, they've invested a high first round draft pick in Daniel Jones. Now is the time where you go, okay, we need to make a decision on him. And the best way to do that is, okay, now there's no excuses. You've got a wide receiver 1. We've gone and got you a shiny new toy in the draft. You've got a couple of tight ends. You've got one of the best running backs in football. Now is, I think Golladay is going to depend on what we see from Daniel Jones.
Right.
If Daniel Jones can turn into a guy that's worthy of the 6th overall pick in the NFL draft, then, if you've got Golladay, you're laughing. But I'm not completely sure that happens. And I think it's more likely that we see Golladay sort of falter to deceive and just not. I think maybe we've seen the best of Kenny Golladay being the primary target in Detroit with Matt Stafford, and now he's the man in New York with a lesser quarterback. I'm not going to say they're a lesser team than Detroit, but they're probably in the same ballpark.
Yeah.
I just wonder if we've already seen the best of Kenny Golladay, maybe.
So at the beginning of the offseason, even at the time of the signing of this contract, I would have argued you very much. Been a big Galladay defender. But as time has gone on and I've learned more information, had to take myself out of that take lock, and I tend to agree with you. I think, unfortunately, there is a very good chance we have seen the best of Kenny Galladay already. That's not to say he will be bad, but it is to say that we should definitely temper expectations despite the fact that he is now the highly paid wide receiver, one of what should be a pretty good volume offense. Largely due to some of the reasons you already mentioned. Daniel Jones is still a bit of a question mark, so we'd have to see market improvement from him. They have, better weapons on this offense than really he had to compete with against in Detroit. Saquon Barkley is far and away the best player he's ever played with, non-quarterback wise. They drafted a first-round receiver in Tony. Now, while I'm not necessarily big on him, obviously the team is if they invested a first-round pick. Evan Ingram's still there. They brought in Kyle Rudolph, which I know not a big deal, but still another red zone type target.
Yeah,
so
and that's
all
the
of
thing
these
is
things
Kenny
could play a role
Galladay's
in limiting him.
Yeah, and Kenny Galladay's a big body wide receiver, so you kind of go, okay, well maybe we're going to get that red zone touchdown upside. Well, now they've got Kyle Rudolph and Evan Ingram, so and Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley's not going to be happy if the ball's taken out of his hands in the red zone.
No, and nor should it be.
Exactly, and there's just a lot, like you said, you hit the nail on the head perfectly. There's a lot more talent around him now outside of the quarterback position than there was in Detroit. There's a much lesser talent at the quarterback position than there was in Detroit. Right. It just, I picked, in my home league, I managed to pick Kenny Galladay up last year when he was going through the injury problems. I think James Robinson and a Hayden Hurst, thinking, Robinson's going to be a one-year wonder. Galladay's going to come back fit next year. Didn't expect him to end up on the Giants. Now he has. Initially, I was okay with it. Now I'm trying to shop him.
Same. That's exactly when in one of my main leagues that I was not going to contend, so was trying to make some moves. I picked up some injured players. Saquon, one of them. Kenny Galladay, the other. I was able to get him at a good price due to the injury from a contending team. Thought it was going to be a steal coming into this year. Was excited upon the Giants signing, and now, I am grateful that he is the third or fourth receiver on my team. Yeah, and I don't have to rely on him more than that. And everybody seems to be in that same mindset, so I'm having a hard time unloading him.
Yeah, that's the thing. If I was going to unload him, I probably should have done it when he first moved to the Giants, and everyone was excited about it. I think now everyone's had time to sort of take a look at it and think about it a bit more. We're all in the same boat.
And I cannot find it for the life of me. I've been trying to look as we've been talking, but there was a thread on Twitter earlier, or I'd say late last week. And I apologize to whoever you are for not being able to give you credit, but they kind of took a little deeper look at some of Galladay's numbers, and really outside of that half seat or his WR9 season, only half of it with Stafford, there really hasn't been a lot there. And compared those numbers against the first couple of years of Daniel Jones, and even baked in a 25% production improvement from Daniel Jones, along with Galladay's historic efficiency metrics, his 21% target share, etc., extrapolated it all out. And even with that, we're looking at a low-end WR2 season at best with Galladay. Yeah. That's with notable improvement from Jones. So it's really hard to get too excited. I hate to say it. I've totally turned my mind around on him. And unless I'm drafting him, in the WR 30-something range, I'm probably staying away in redraft and in Dynasty.
Yeah, it's one of them. I was pretty similar to yourself. I was excited about it. I was excited about getting him as an injured player. I was excited when he first went to the Giants. And now I just look at it and go, I just don't see how it gets. Like, he's not going to be a wide receiver one. It's just not. I don't see that as being attainable for him.
There doesn't seem to be a path. No.
Yeah, unless Daniel Jones takes on a massive, massive leap and Kenny Galladay plays the best football that he's played his whole career. But this is a guy coming off injuries.
Right.
They don't tend to get better as players get further into their NFL career. They tend to get worse. So yeah, I'm not completely sold on Kenny Galladay. I guess we'll just see what happens. But if you offered me a wide receiver 2 season from him, I'd probably take it right now, to be honest.
I'd be thrilled with a wide receiver 2 season at this point. I would take
it. I'm just really worried he's going to play 5 games and that's it. There's going to be no more Kenny Galladay.
Yeah. I'm right there with you, sadly. I wish I'd kept, or I wish I had not made that deal in my Dynasty League, but here we are. So that's it for Mr. Kenny G. And so we're going to take a look at his new teammate, Mr. Kadarius Toney. I viewed him as a bit of a reach there in the first round. And I know you weren't, not a fan of them essentially trading down away from Devontae Smith and thus ending up with Toney. That's a massive, massive drop.
That's a huge drop.
And while Toney's a great athlete, I mean, he's definitely got some electric abilities. I'm just not sure about him as a complete football player and how that's going to fit in the NFL and specifically into the Giants scheme. So I'm curious as to your thoughts on Toney.
No, I think it's pretty similar to yourself, especially like Toney. I think is a good player. You know, from what I saw at Florida, I watched him quite closely in some of the senior ball practices, and you know the guy can play the position, but I worry that he's more of an athlete playing wide receiver than an actual wide receiver. I found it really interesting that it looked like Urban Meyer wanted him over Travis Etienne. That's the rumor that come out after the draft that Urban Meyer really wanted Toney and the Giants snagged him. I didn't think there would be a team upset that Toney wasn't there in the mid-20s.
In the first.
Yeah, it's just craziness. Now, ball in hand, he's a dangerous player. He can be a yak monster, but look, who's the offensive coordinator in New York? I don't have any confidence in Jason Garrett. I just don't.
No,
I don't have confidence. Yeah, I think if we're going to see Toney, it's going to be used more as a stunt to get somebody else open to take, make the defense go, oh, what's Toney doing over there? Oh, you know what? It was all just smoke and mirrors, and they've thrown it 40 yards to Barkley out the backfield. Great, because this is a Jason Garrett offense. This is a mediocre at best quarterback. This isn't a good football team. At least it's not a good offense, in my opinion.
No.
And I just wonder if Toney's going to have much or any fantasy relevance, especially in 2021. I think it might take him maybe a couple of years at least to find what he can do at the NFL level before we start worrying about plugging him in as a starter week in, week out in our fantasy teams.
I'm not even sure if we ever get to the point where he's a weekly starter, but I do think it's definitely going to be a year before we determine whether or not we keep him on the bench for buys and other flex fill-ins, etc. So it's a guy even if he does have, again, real talent, yet another guy in the bucket of better real life player than fantasy player.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's going to be an offensive weapon I don't want to say casual fans because we're all casual fans to somebody that knows a lot more and studies the game a lot harder. But in terms of he's going to be a guy that when you look at the box score, you're going to go, well, Toney's not done anything. And when you watch the game, you go, well, look how they utilize him to make a defense react to then do something off of that. I think he could be that player, one of the guys that gets sort of underrated and underappreciated because his box score isn't great. But when you actually watch the tape and see what he does and see how that makes the defense react to then open X, Y, and Z up, you go, okay, I can see why he's playing week in, week out, playing snap after snap. But that doesn't equal fantasy points, unfortunately.
Nope. Yeah, I think he'll see.
Unless Scott Fishbowl's going to open some crazy like 7-point metric for getting your mate open.
Scott gets creative. You never know.
He does get creative, so that would be interesting. See if you can work that one out.
See if I can put in the word. I don't know if I have the connection, but I might know people that do. And I do think you'll get the occasional splash play. You'll see the occasional 15 or 20-point week. He'll take a screen from the 8-yard line to the house, and you'll get that.
And when he does that, trade him.
Yes, immediately.
When he does that, somebody gets excited, trade him and go and get a first. Go and get a late first because someone thinks this is Odell Beckham Jr. 2.0 because it's not. He's not got the offense. He's not got the creative mind. I don't think he's a good enough wide receiver. He might be a good enough athlete. I don't think he's a good enough wide receiver. I don't think he plays the position as nuanced as guys that you want to be starting week in, week out. So when you do get that big splash play and he houses one off a jet sweep or off a 5-yard slant from Daniel Jones, then trade him. Don't think that that's going to happen week in, week out, because I highly doubt it.
No, he didn't just figure it out. This isn't the breakout.
Exactly.
And so I think that pretty much covers where we're at. I think we're pretty down on both guys in both redraft and dynasty, and probably on the Giants really as a whole. We're not really getting into them, but that's just not a situation I'm looking to be too involved in now or in the near future.
Yeah, it's not one of the, Washington. We've spoken about Washington, who I want shares of Terry, I want shares of Gibson, I want even Curtis Samuel to some extent. And then we go to the Giants, and I'm kind of out on Golladay, I'm out on Tony, I'm out on Jones. I'm still a little bit worried about Barkley's injury. It's just not something I want to touch, especially for the 2021 season. I'd rather see how it pans out, and then if I have to pay that bit extra because I've made a mistake, then I'd rather that than take the risk now.
In this case, yes. I think the added cost of what you might need to use in order to attain some pieces of that situation, if they become attractive, is a lot smaller of a cost than what you might have, be given to be a part of that today. So now we're going to jump into what I'd say is probably a big part of the highlight of the show. And we're going to jump into the Philadelphia receivers. We're going to start with your boy, Slim Reaper, Devontae Smith, Heisman winner, and the newest star of the Philadelphia Eagles. So we know that you have just dropped a new article yesterday. Your what do you guys call them at Instagram? Four-eyed rookie highlights? Four-eyed rookie snapshot. That's what it is. Snapshot.
Close enough. Devonta Smith. Yeah, for me, I know we've spoken about this before previously. He's my rookie wide receiver one. He's not in Star Wars. He's my rookie wide receiver one. I don't understand how he's being faded. I don't understand how he's fallen to the back end of super flex drafts. I just don't get it. Like, put the tape on. That's all you've got to do. You just put the tape on and tell me that is not a complete receiver. That is not a wide receiver one in the NFL. Size be damned.
Well, I think that's exactly it. I think a lot of the guys that are the most down on Smith anyways are the analytics guys that don't watch a lot of film, rely really on a lot of previous metrics and indicators for future success, and they don't tend to bet on outliers. So, and if you do believe in Devontae Smith, that's exactly what he is. An outlier. He's the outlier.
Yeah.
So I tend to lean a little more in your corner. I'm a fan. I don't view him as the rookie wide receiver one. I'm in the boring, bland Chase camp. But that said, not fading him. I think clearly the rookie wide receiver two, no matter how you look at it, redraft, dynasty. Certainly a guy I want as much of as I can. So now what sets him apart for you, though? Why do you view him as the rookie wide receiver one versus the guy who's being hyped as potentially generational in Chase?
Yeah, so I mean, for me, I think Jamar Chase is an outside only wide receiver. Now he's a big body, maybe not as big bodies as we initially thought, but he's a big bodied outside bully, is what he is. He's a deep threat. He's gonna pressure number one corner, dominating physically, and score bombs. That's great at college. That works when you're so much better than everybody else. When the corner opposite you is a lawyer now or a banker, like, that's great. Well, go and do that to Tre'Davious White. Go and do that to Marcus Peters. Plus, he's in an offense. We all knew he was going to Cincinnati. Realistically, we knew that Joe Burrow was going to get his guy. Look at who he's competing with. He's competing with T. Higgins, who's a stud. He's competing with Who's the third receiver? Tyler Boyd. He's competing with Tyler Boyd, who, Tyler Boyd's going to get his.
Absolutely.
Likely predominantly playing out of the slot, and you're going to have T and Chase outside. Joe Mixon, is he just going to forever flatter to deceive as a running back one, or are they finally going to start giving him some touches? They're finally going to start allowing him to do some more out of the backfield. The offensive line isn't great. They didn't really address it like they should have. So I see an outside-only receiver. So PPR leagues for a start. Now, I don't expect him to be a 10, 12 target guy. I don't think this is a guy that's going to bring in 12 balls every game, 10 balls every game. Jamar Chase, for me, has probably got TD upside. Now, I'm a lot lower on Jamar Chase than everybody else, apparently. But you compare that to Devonta Smith, who can line up everywhere. I don't know if you've read my article and you look at how he was targeted at Alabama. He lined up everywhere. He caught the ball everywhere. He attacked every single depth of the field. He's dangerous everywhere. He's gone to a team that he's got some familiarity with the quarterback. Who else is taking targets from him? Jalen Reagor, Greg Ward, Travis Fulgham. None of these guys matter. None of these guys are any good. Ward and Fulgham, we're not going to remember their name in 2 seasons. Rager's going to be like, oh yeah, do you remember that guy they took before Justin Jefferson? That's stupid. But this is not, for me, and I only play PPR. I play full PPR, Dynasty football. That's my game. How is Devonta Smith not the wide receiver one? I don't get it. I just don't, for me, it's, people say, oh, Jamar Chase, everybody says Jamar Chase. You tell me why. I'm like, well, you tell me why Jamar Chase is going to score more points in PPR formats than Devonta Smith. I know the guy's undersized, but watch the tape. The man's catching balls in the slot. He's getting absolutely annihilated and bouncing straight back up. He's not. He's small, but he's not weak. He's not.
Right.
He doesn't look worried about contact. He doesn't look worried about being hit.
No, he doesn't shy away.
No, not at all. That's the boy. He
can make every play, make every catch. He can do it all.
Well, I found one of the most interesting things was PFF's contested catch grades on Devonta Smith and Jamar Chase. They're the same. 90.0 plus PFF rating in contested catches. Both of them hauled in 49% of the contested catch targets. And one of them's this bully boy outside wide receiver, and the other one's too small to play in the NFL. I don't get it. I just don't. I don't know how the narrative got this far away from reality.
Well, he was picked 10, 11 by Philadelphia, so I mean, clearly the NFL didn't fade him either. They take that over.
I've got it on pretty good authority that the Eagles jumped the Giants because the Giants were taking him at 11.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
There was no way he was getting past the Giants at 11. No way.
That's why. That's part of why I hate the move for Tony so much, because they effectively traded Smith for Tony and a third or whatever the hell else they picked up in that deal, and that's just the disparity there is outrageous.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great move from the Eagles going up and getting a guy. They needed a wide receiver. They went and got, for me, the best one in the draft. The numbers match the film, and it's kind of just, I just feel people are just going, he's too small. He's too small. I don't care what the film says. I don't care what the PFF numbers say. I don't care about the mentality. I don't care about the mindset. I don't care about anything. He's just too small. I think you're wrong. Not you, but people that say he's too small. Yeah. I think you're wrong. I think he's going to be one of the top wide receivers in the NFL in the next couple of years. I genuinely believe that. You only got to watch his even if you don't watch tape, just put the highlights on from this season and tell me that there are plays that any wide receiver that isn't elite isn't making them plays.
Just throw up the 22 touchdowns he had. I think that's all you need to do. Just throw on that reel.
It was ridiculous. It was ridiculous.
Oh, see, Oh no, good.
And, I was just going to bring up the TDs. Philadelphia Eagles wide receiver core as a whole scored 14 TDs last year.
That's pathetic.
It's pathetic. It's nobody on that team that plays wide receiver. I'm sure we're going to get into Dallas Goedert in a minute, but no wide receiver on that team is taking the ball away from Devonta Smith. He can line up everywhere. He's played with this quarterback before. They traded up inside the top 10 to go and get him. He's got everything you need to go, that is a fantasy stud. But I just see guys just not interested. Fall into 112. I've seen him fall into the early second round. I couldn't believe it.
That's ridiculous. If you have another guy, maybe you like better another position. Wow, I can't justify in a super flex rookie draft anything lower than probably 7th or 8th, maybe 8th.
I've seen Michael Carter go ahead of him. Michael Carter go in the first round, Devonta Smith drop into the second round, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know whether to just cuss the guy out, leave the league because they don't know what they're doing. I didn't know what to do. I was just in shock.
What you do is you wait a year and you just enjoy the guy's story when he reflects on the pain, much like all of us that drafted N'Keal Harry at 101 or 102 a couple years ago.
Ooh.
It still eats at me.
Oh, I bet that's raw, that still.
It's a bad one. So yeah. I think you're going to... anybody passing on Devonta Smith for Michael Carter is going to be in my same position, and it sucks.
Yeah. I couldn't believe it when I saw that, but yeah.
So back to Smith, and, well, you mentioned we'd get into Goddard here in a second, and that kind of relates to where I'm going with this. As far as why I'd have him behind Chase in Dynasty currently, and even for 2021, well, first go back to Chase for a second. I don't view T Higgins as much of a stud as many do. I'm probably one of the lower people on T Higgins. I still think he's a good player, but I don't view him as some budding star like everybody else does. I view him as a guy who's just going to be a very solid, very good NFL player, but he is very quickly going to be supplanted by Chase as far as I look at it. And I do think even if they're both heavily involved, I'm also pretty down on Mixon compared to many. So I think the passing volume is going to be there. I don't think it's unrealistic to think Burrow's going to average 45 pass attempts a game, to be quite honest. So, and as far as Philadelphia goes, yes, there's the Goddard factor. There's no receiver to worry about, but I do think Goddard's a well above average tight end, and I'm also not very sold on Jalen Hurts. His completion percentage is easy to point to. There is a little more context you need to dive into, but he does need some work there, and given just the overall lack of offensive weapons, his limited experience coming in, what I have viewed to be an overrated real-life performance from him over, those final few weeks. Good fantasy performances, but as far as reality goes, not so great, and I don't know if that's really sustainable to support great fantasy efforts from his wide receiving core, specifically Smith. So that's more where my concern is. And I admittedly don't know much about their new coach. So we'll see how he runs this team. But right now, as I look at the offense and the team situation, I think we're going to see a lot of Hurts and Sanders. And I mean, Obviously Smith will be the most targeted pass catcher, but I'm not sure what that means in Philadelphia.
Yeah, I do get the trepidation with Hurts. I'm not a fan of Hurts either. I don't see a way that he's the starting quarterback for the Eagles in 2022. I just don't see how that happens. With all the draft capital they've got, he's going to have a Lamar Jackson season, and he's not that guy. It's not going to happen. But for me, it comes back to Smith's ability to line up everywhere. I think he's going to be, like you said, the most targeted receiver on that team. How many targets is the tight end going to get realistically? I expect most defenses to say, okay, you're the Philadelphia Eagles. Excuse me. We know what you want to do. We know you want to throw the ball to the tight end. That's all you've wanted to do since 2 years before you won the Super Bowl. It was just throw the ball to Zach Ertz.
That's a good point.
Oh, now we drafted Dallas Goedert. Throw the ball to him too. Take that away. then what do you have to do? You have to contain the run because Jalen Hurts, if you give him a lane, he's going to take it because that's a lot easier for him than throwing the football. So once you've taken away the big outside receiver, which is for the Eagles is Dallas Goedert, he plays that role. Once you take away the run game, what's left? Devonta Smith. You're just going to line the guy up wherever it's easiest for Jalen Hurts to get him the ball. And I expect Jalen Hurts to get him the ball. Now, can Jalen Hurts do that? I think so. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of Miles Sanders. I don't see how Miles Sanders is going to hurt teams run the ball. I don't see how he's going to be a dangerous pass catcher. I don't think that's what they're going to do. You know, what's the likelihood of Jalen Hurts throwing a 3-yard pass to Miles Sanders where he's just going to run it himself if that's the case? So I think that short passing game is not going to be, it's not going to exist much in Philly.
That's a good point.
I just expect Jalen Hurts to either run the ball, throw it deep, which we know Devonta Smith can, he had the most deep targets and most deep touchdowns in college football last year. So we know he's got that in his game.
Yep.
And if he's not going to throw it deep, he's just going to look for his favourite weapon and his blanket. And whilst that might start the season as Dallas Goedert, does it end the season as Dallas Goedert or does it end the season as Devonta Smith? My money's on it ends the season as his best pass catcher. And then, if you picked him up in Dynasty, what have the Eagles got? 3 first-round picks next year?
Yeah.
If they haven't got the number 1 overall pick and they want it, they're going to go and get it. If they believe that one of these quarterbacks coming out this year is the guy, that's the guy they want. That is the heir apparent to Carson Wentz. They've got the ammunition to go and get him. And then
they should, theoretically.
And then all of a sudden, Devonta Smith has gone and got himself a decent quarterback. So, I mean, I'm high on Smith for redraft. I'm high on Smith for Dynasty. I'm ridiculously high on Smith, more than anybody else I know in this industry, if you want to call it that. Yeah. But I just don't see how he's not a target hog and how he doesn't improve year on year once the Eagles get rid of Hurts and get a quarterback in instead of a running back throwing the ball.
I'll say I have a hell of a lot more faith that they'll do it than Washington will. So as far as projecting the dynasty outlook, yeah.
I don't know. I'm going to have to, I might be eating some humble pie, but I don't see it. I just think Smith's too good to bust. I think he's too good to bust. He's going to make any situation and circumstance fit him, and he's going to make it work because he's that talented and because he has that ability that you can't take him away by saying, okay, we know where he's going to line up. We know what he's going to do. We're going to take him away because you can't. If you line him up all over the place, eventually they're going to find the mismatch. And when they find the mismatch, it's over until you plug it. He's just a chess piece. He's an elite chess piece, in my opinion. And there's not many of them in the NFL.
Oh, you're right. You're causing me to rethink this a little bit more. I mean, I'm still not sure I put him above Chase yet, but I think I need to take another, real deep look at Devontae.
My hot take is Jamar Chase is just going to be Mike Williams.
Ooh.
He's just going to be Mike Williams. That's what he's going to be.
That stings because I was also super high on Mike Williams. I thought Williams was going to be a superstar.
I was so confident.
I still haven't given up hope either.
I was so confident he was going to be a superstar. I tweeted in that draft cycle saying that whoever takes Deshaun Watson better draft Mike Williams as well because that's the only reason he's going as high as he's going. And now I look silly. But I own it. I said it. I thought Mike Williams was going to be the guy. And
he just can't stay healthy. I don't think anybody thinks Mike Williams sucks. He just can't play.
He doesn't suck. Yeah, but he's very limited to what he can do. He's a bully boy outside, physically dominant wide receiver. And I think that's what Jamar Chase is going to end up being. And, it might work for him because Joe Burrow just goes, that's my guy. And I'm throwing in the ball no matter what. But I mean, again, I'm really high on T. Higgins. I really like T. Higgins. Something with these big-bodied Clemson receivers that just drives me wild, apparently. But
they're irresistible. I think that's part of the reason I kind of gravitated toward Clemson a few years ago. I mean, even Hopkins, which
I've had some receivers. Clemson.
Watkins,
Sammy Watkins broke my heart. Let's not talk about him.
Every time one of these guys comes in, though, I tend to be in on him. And mentioned we were talking about Travis Etienne last week. Extremely high on Etienne. Just my Clemson boys. What can I say? Can't help myself. So back to the Eagles, though. So that's where we're at on Smith. Please read Billy's article, get a little more information. I actually want to take this deeper now, and so I've got a little bit of homework to do after this. And so continuing on with Philadelphia, I think we kind of covered it in the Devontae Smith discussion. Jalen Reagor stinks. We're out. We're just
well out, all the way out.
Why even waste the time? I'm taking him off the show sheet.
All the way out.
And then, to kind of close it out, I mentioned I'm pretty high on Goddard as far as tight ends go. I mean, I tend to be a top 3 or nothing type person when it comes to viewing tight ends. But as far as that middle tier goes, I think he's, at least as far as redraft goes, he's right there with a Hawkinson or somebody of that degree, or pretty close.
I think if he can stay fit, if he can stay healthy this year for redraft, I expect him to have a shot of being a top 5 tight end, which is nothing to sniff at. If you can get a top 5 tight end, the drop off is huge. But is he going to be, again, for redraft? I'm more of a dynasty player, as you know. How long, even if he's a top 5 tight end this year, he might get that value spike where if you would have waited a year, you could have traded him for a bit more. How long is he going to be a top 5, top 7, top 8 tight end for? I'm not too sure. I mean, I gave up. So getting back to my home league, getting back to Devonta Smith, I gave up Dallas Goedert and a 2022 first to trade back into the end of the first round and pick up Devonta Smith.
That's a good deal.
I think
I like that.
I thought so. I thought so. In my tight ends are Travis Kelce and Kyle Pitts, so I was happy.
No brainer then. No brainer.
Exactly. So, I mean, I don't mind Dallas Goedert. I'm a fan of the player. Am I like, is he a must buy? Is he a must keep? Whatever.
No, actually, now that you've brought it up, as I am pretty high on him for 2021, I'd probably look to move him after this year, or even late in the year after he's had a good string of weeks, not just after the one boom week. Let him get 3 or 4 really strong performances over a 6-week stretch, and boom, ship him.
And that might be the best play for Dallas Goedert. Let him, like you say, let him finish this year as a top 6 tight end, sell him for max value before he drops off.
It's exactly
the smart play. Probably the smart play.
Now we're going to move on to the self-proclaimed America's team, Dallas Cowboys. I know you're not over here in America, so I just want to speak for all of us that are not Dallas Cowboys fans. They are, in fact, not America's team. They never will be America's team. A hell of a lot more than Dallas is. I can get behind that. But anytime I have a chance to throw some Cowboy shade, I'm going to do it.
Yeah, of course.
So we'll jump in now. They probably are the highest profile team of this group. I'll begrudgingly admit. I can't just ignore facts. But and we also have probably 2 of the bigger names in the receiving position in this division as well. Certainly one of the most hyped players in Dynasty that I've seen over the last few years, really since I've started, in this format. So we'll jump in, though, into a guy that seems perpetually 25 years old in Amari Cooper. And the guy, some crazy home road splits over the years with him, especially since coming into Dallas. He's been much more productive at home. We've seen some various injury years, a lot of extreme talent that he clearly has, but a lot of inconsistency for various reasons. And then last year, while Dallas as a team was an absolute train wreck, Dak and Amari were through the roof. I want to say Amari was the wide receiver 2 overall during that first 4-week stretch. virtually unstoppable as they were climbing back from 30-point deficits every game. And so when we see Dak in the McCarthy offense with that poor defense, which really hasn't gotten any better, chucking it out, it clearly is providing a great path to volume and production for Cooper. And it seemed to work both on the road and at home, unlike just at home like we've seen during a lot of his Dallas tenure. So I think it provides a level of optimism, but also uncertainty going into 2021. And, well, we'll approach the second part of this question after. So, yeah, what are your thoughts on Cooper in the short term?
Oh, Cooper for 2021 in redraft, stud. For me, stud. If Dak could have stayed healthy all year, we're probably looking at a top 5 wide receiver. There's that, like you say, that defense hasn't got any better. They've added Michael Parsons. Okay, you've added a linebacker, fantastic. Linebacker wasn't a super strength, but it wasn't a massive issue. No. The bigger issue was on the back end because you can't cover anybody.
Nope. Secondary is a mess.
It's awful. It might as well be Atlanta's. It's awful. They're not going to cover anybody. We've already spoke about some of the wide receivers in this division alone that they're going to have to deal with. They're going to be trying to win games. Whilst I don't expect the defense to be good, I don't expect it to be as, almost historically bad as it was to start last year. I don't expect them having to dig themselves out of 30, 35-point holes, but they're not going to be beating teams 18-7. They're going to be winning games 35-30, 38-32, that sort of crap. They're going to be conceding a lot of points, they're going to be scoring a lot of points, and that just bodes well for Amari Cooper because he and Dak have got great chemistry. He is to be the wide receiver one on that Dallas Cowboys team with the offensive talent they've got for redraft. Is all in. It's a stud. You just need guys to stay healthy. If everybody stays healthy, you've definitely got a wide receiver one in my opinion, but you might have a top end wide receiver one.
I certainly agree that he's in line to be a wide receiver one. Given health, it's hard to project otherwise for Cooper, in my opinion. So I'm right there with you. I don't know that the ceiling is necessarily there for that top 5 finish compared to some of the setups a couple of other elite guys have and some of the competition that Cooper faces within his own offense. Now, the volume might be there to be able to offset the fact that he's playing with so many other great players on that team. But I think that leaves enough of a question mark that I think it would really take a lot of things to go right for him to reach that top 5 ceiling. I guess I'd say it's there, but I'd say it's unlikely to attain.
Yeah, I get the trepidation. You look at the offense, you see Michael Gallup, you see TD Lamb. But for me, it's that familiarity with the quarterback. It's Dak to Cooper. We've seen it. Does CeeDee Lamb just keep on this meteoric rise, or do we see the sophomore slump that we see with so many second-year players, especially at the wide receiver position? I don't know. I think this is Cooper's. For me, I'm high on Cooper for 2021. For redraft, he's a guy I'm targeting for sure. But we'll see. We'll see what happens.
So I don't know. Here we go. So on Sleeper, most recent redraft ADP for Amari Cooper. Let's see, where is he going? Wide receiver 15. And redraft all day. All day.
All day. That is a value smash.
He's going behind Terry McLaurin, Mike Evans, A-Rob, Julio, Keenan Allen, Michael Thomas, Ridley, Jefferson, AJP. So usual suspects. But those that are right around him, Mike Evans, Terry, Julio. I might still put A-Rob or Keenan above him, or at least I can see why you might take one of those guys ahead of Cooper. But
Keenan, I love Keenan. See maybe. I love Keenan Allen. I love his quarterback. Julio Jones.
That's
Terry
a tough one.
McLaurin over. No.
Yeah.
No. No. If I can get him at wide receiver 15 in redraft, I am a happy man.
Yeah. 41 overall in single QB, 58 overall in Superflex.
Damn.
So you're getting him at the
I'm
end
gonna
of the
say- I'm
fifth in a
gonna say-
Superflex?
I'm going to be sending some trades out for Amari Cooper after this. I'm going to be sending some trades out. I know in a few leagues he's unattainable because the owner's a Cowboys homer, but in other leagues, I'm going to get myself some Murray. Any league that I'm looking to try and win this year or contend this year, I'm going to get some Amari Cooper, and I will use all of the TD Lamb, all of the stacked offense, all of the Dak injury. I will use that to convince the owner to give me a discount, and I'm going to get Amari Cooper. I can't believe he's outside of the top 12 wide receivers in redraft, according to Sleeper ADP. That's crazy to me.
That's where I expected to see him for Dynasty, was kind of in that range, that WR
that wide receiver
15-ish.
two, that wide receiver 2 range for Dynasty, just because, like you say, I'm surprised he's not 30 yet. He seems like he's been around forever.
Okay.
But
I know Sleeper's probably not the best for redraft ADP. I think the majority of us that are on there tend to be Dynasty players. But with that said, I do think Dynasty players tend to be as dialed into players as much as anybody. So I do still find that, that's actually a big surprise. Jeez.
Yeah, for me, that's when you, listen, guys, if wide receiver 15, Amari Cooper staring at you in redraft leagues, smash. He's on an offense. He's on an offense that throw the ball a ton. He's on an offense that have got or a team that have got a bad defense. He's quarterback's favorite weapon. He's one of the best route runners in football. Has been since he stepped into the league.
Well, at that price too, at 15, even if I'd say the risk of him hitting that level or busting, hitting the level at a minimum is almost granted if there's health.
Where did he finish?
Even as
Where
far
did he finish last year? 8?
His total, or his final finish last year, I can tell you in just a second. Let's go to 2020. Cooper. He finished 15 in terms of total points, so that's right where he was. And in terms of points per game, looks like he was down at 20 in points per game. I mean, but that's without Dak for 3/4 of the season. So
he finished. So you're buying him
with Andy Dalton
now.
and Ben DiNucci.
Yeah, you're buying him now at that wide receiver 15 ADP, which is where he was at last year with, as you say, Andy Dalton and Ben DiNucci. With Dak Prescott, he was a top 2 wide receiver.
I'm pretty sure he was, wide receiver 2 during that opening 4-week stretch.
And he's still being priced at his 2020 finish.
Essentially his floor.
That's crazy to me. That just screams value. It just screams value. Like, if he finished as wide receiver 15 with Ben DiNucci and Andy Dalton, there's no way he finishes lower than that with Dak Prescott.
Yeah.
So like you say, you're buying him at his absolute basement with a huge upside.
Agreed.
Smash at wide receiver 15.
As far as redraft goes, he's one of the most screaming values at the position that I see.
Absolute smash at 15.
I guess people perhaps fading because of a couple of the other guys we're going to discuss in CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup, even the return of Blake Jarwin, if you're worried about him. To me, like we've already established, Cooper is the alpha. He is the veteran. He is the guy that has the chemistry with the elite quarterback. So it's really hard for me to fade him in an offense that's going to see this kind of volume, and especially passing volume. CeeDee Lamb is a nice player. Gallup's a good player. It's just so hard to resist, again, an alpha receiver on a high volume, high passing attack team with an elite quarterback. And that's proven.
Yeah.
You have every factor that you possibly need.
It's crazy to me. I just don't understand how he's. I don't understand how he's wide receiver 15. But if you're going to give me that value, I'm gonna take it.
It looks like he's going about the same in Dynasty. Superflex, he's 58 Superflex redraft, 59 overall Superflex Dynasty. So that seems a little more appropriate in Dynasty. I think that's a fair price. I don't think you're getting great value or ripped off there.
No, yeah, Dynasty, you're paying the right price for a guy that's gonna, might give you, realistically ceiling 2 more elite seasons as a ceiling. I don't see that. I think we might get one more top year out of him being this year, and then he's going to slowly sort of fade off a little bit as CeeDee Lamb becomes the wide receiver one in Dallas. But for 2021, he's a smash. For Dynasty, it kind of depends on where you are as a team. Are you contending this year? Are you looking to get younger? Then that sort of makes a decision for you whether you're buying or selling.
Agreed. And as far as startup goes, it just depends on, if you have any league mates going for the productive struggle start and they're going to be out of it, and maybe you're collecting on some great veteran value later in the draft.
Yeah, I agree. Startup just depends on how does the draft fall. If you've got a few guys going productive struggle, and you can pick up some of these more veteran guys that can give you a good 2-3 year window, attack an Amari Cooper, especially at that kind of price.
So moving on to some of Dak's other targets here, kind of roll CD and Gallup into one little discussion here, I think. CD's been one of the more hyped young receivers over the last few years and justified a lot of it last year. Had a great season.
Yeah. Stepped
up, again, despite the play of Andy Dalton and Ben DiNucci, much like Cooper did. Played well. They still produced. More importantly, the fantasy production was there. And I've seen him treated in Dynasty as already a top 10 Dynasty receiver. And as far as redraft goes, well, since we looked up Cooper, I'm going to take a quick look here at our buddy. Where is my ADP sheet? Let's see where he's fallen. So CeeDee Lamb, WR24 in redraft. Oh, we've lost Billy. Well, then I'll keep this going. So, it looks like we've got CeeDee Lamb going at wide receiver 24 in redraft, so right at the back end of number 2. This is a situation here where kind of how I feel about Cooper. Oh, and it looks like we've got him back, so let's bring him back on. There you are, sir.
No idea what happened there.
No worries. So, I just looked up CD's redraft ADP, and he's going at wide receiver 24 for 2021. And actually lower than I expected, and a spot where I'd still be pretty happy to take him. I'm not sure if he... I think he'll hit top 24. I'd say he has a very good chance at that just based on volume alone that should come out of Dallas.
Yeah.
I wouldn't
I'm
expect
comfortable taking him now.
And then...
Taking him now.
Although much, much higher in Dynasty. You got to spend a 3rd round pick on him in Dynasty, even early 2nd or early 3rd round and single QB, late 3rd round super flex seems appropriate. Probably a little rich for my blood, especially in super flex there. But you're definitely going to be investing and must believe in him as a top 10 position when it comes to the Dynasty perspective.
Yeah, I really like CeeDee Lamb Dynasty. I haven't got many shares of him just because I'm not prepared to pay that top end price, and there's always somebody that is, which fair enough. Just I'm not comfortable paying that top end price. Some people are taking him as a top 5 wide receiver in Dynasty startups. And,
I see him regularly in the top 5.
Yeah, I'm not paying that.
No,
I'm not paying that.
Extremely rich for me.
Yeah, I'm not paying that. I think the wide receiver position is so deep.
That's a big factor.
Yeah, they last a little bit longer, or quite a bit longer than a running back. So in terms of how long the productive and fantasy producers for. So I don't mind sort of punting it a little bit down and taking guys that are slightly older, like Keenan Allen and maybe not Amari Cooper because he goes a little bit higher, but guys like that. Last year my guy was Stephon Diggs. I was getting him in, 6th round, 7th round of startups, just because
that's unreal to think about looking back.
Yeah,
I mean, I certainly didn't see his 2020 coming, but 6th, 7th round, disrespectful for Diggs.
100%. Even the talent. I mean, I think it was one of the first, might have been the second or third Dial Up the Blitz episode that we ever did, and I was talking to my co-host Chucky, and we were talking about Michael Thomas, and I just said, okay, he's a fantasy stud, but if we're talking actual wide receiver ability, Diggs is better than Michael Thomas by a mile, and the hate I got for that one comment was ridiculous.
It doesn't take much to trigger people when you're talking football.
Yeah, you're not wrong. But funnily enough, I haven't heard anybody. No one's come to me and gone, "Oh, you might be right." So yeah, we'll see. But
you might need to pull some receipts on that episode.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna start sending some messages and go, "Hey, you remember that?" But look, I mean, back to the point. I don't mind punting and waiting a little bit for wide receivers in fantasy football, in dynasty football. I'll let these brave guys take these. They see these guys, they have great rookie years or a good couple of years, and they want to draft them in the 1st and 2nd round. I'm not that guy. 1st and 2nd round.
Jefferson is not your 101.
No, for me, I'm a dynasty superflex player, full PPR, even full PPR. The 1st and 2nd round is quarterback and running back. That's just how I play fantasy football, and I can't be the guy that takes Justin Jefferson at 109. I just can't do it. I'm not that guy.
No, I'm with you.
Fair play if you are, but not me.
I'm a huge AJ Brown guy, as you know. Love AJ Brown, and I haven't been able to get him in a single startup since anything that started towards the end of last season, simply because I'm not willing to invest a top 2, usually even a top 3 pick in Dynasty into a wide receiver, unless I'm intentionally going the productive struggle route, which I have employed, but I typically don't, even when I go into a draft thinking I might, because it's just inherent. I can't go in planning to tank year 1 for the long-term growth. I mean, it is a good plan and can really pay off as a long-term strategy, but I just can't, even for the 1 year, handle knowing I have no shot. It just keeps me alive.
I can't do it. I mean, I've always find myself doing everything I can, trade up into the top 2 and taking Josh Allen and ruining the rest of my draft. But that's the Buffalo homer in me, I guess.
Get your guy.
That's it. Get your guy.
Always get your guy. More, and this is going to be a premise on this show long term, every episode. This is a game that is about fun. We play to have fun. We take it seriously. A lot of us are playing for money. Obviously, there is more to it, but the primary function of playing fantasy football is simply to have a good time. Part of having a good time is being able to roster the guys that you enjoy rooting for. In some 100%. Cases, even on your own team. So whatever it is that makes you enjoy the game more, do it. So if that means reach for your favorite player, fucking do it. Go get them.
100%. And that's how I play it. When you think about it, you think about your 5 favorite players. I doubt, on the offensive side of the ball, I doubt many of them suck. If they're your favorite player, they're your favorite player for a reason, because they're good, because they make, great throws, or they make great catches, or they break off 70-yard runs. Whatever it is, that's all fantasy production. Don't worry about the nitty-gritty of, am I getting value here? Does the value work out? What does the trade calculator say? What's his upside in 2 years? Just go and get your guy. Be able to watch football on Sunday and enjoy it and cheer your guys on. That's how I play fantasy football.
Couldn't agree more. Could not agree more. You get so caught up in this little, just trying to squeeze everything you can out of a deal sometimes, or a negotiation, or just not wanting to be taken advantage of by somebody else. But really, again, if you're getting the person you're going for, is that what's really happening? I say no.
Exactly.
And so as far as, so we've kind of veered off topic a bit here, and I think we're starting to run out of time a bit. So just a quick overview, recap here of what we discussed in Dallas. I think for both of us, Amari Cooper, absolute smash and redraft, maybe fading a little more in Dynasty. I think we both expect 1, possibly 2 more elite level seasons.
Yeah.
Probably some serviceable seasons after that, depending on landing spot. If he even sticks around with Dallas, they'll have a chance to get out of his contract following this year. Although I think they'll probably hang on to him for an extra year. So there's a lot of question marks there. So I think we're both a little hesitant with this long-term outlook. CD, both a little lower for redraft probably than consensus, but still happy to take him at that WR24 price.
Yeah, I'll take him at a bottom end wide receiver 2 price all day.
And dynasty wise,
I'd love him if I could afford him.
We just won't pony up. It's not necessarily an unfair price, but it's outside of strategies that we employ.
Exactly that, yeah.
So that is really going to wrap it up. So we've got studs across the division. We've got Scary Terry, stud. Devonta Smith, Slim Reaper.
Stud.
Grade A stud.
Grade A
Get rid of
stud.
from Billy first. And then, of course, Amari Cooper, CD Lamb. And then you got a bunch of bums over in New York. So you can just ignore them. So ultimately, the NFC East, though, is going to be a division that you're likely going to want to look to when you're putting together your, your wide receiver strategy for both 2021 and even in a dynasty startup. Got both guys that are going to be hits for just this season and for this season and beyond, or only beyond. So pay very close attention. And in particular, if you are a dynasty player, you absolutely do need to read Mr. Mustafa's article. I'm going to give you a quick little showing of it so you know exactly where to go, so that way you can take this in. Again, his writing is hosted by our friends over at Fantasy and Frames. They're not only with Billy, but they have a lot of very good writers, a lot of very good content, very good tools over at that site. So please be sure to check them out. And they're just good dudes. I like to support sites that obviously do good work, but are also just fun and enjoyable and integrity driven, and can actually communicate with them.
Great bunch of guys.
Really are.
Yeah. I appreciate them giving this English lad an opportunity to write about your sport for you guys. So yeah, it's really appreciate the guys at Fantasy and Frames.
Yeah, so again, please be sure to go check it out. It is the 4-eyed rookie snapshot of Devonta Smith. It is written by Billy Mustafa. It is hosted at fantasyandframes.com. So with that, I think we're going to wrap it up for the evening. I want to thank you once again, Billy, for coming on. Gosh, we're pushing almost 4 a.m. for you over there. So this is just, I know it kind of works out a little bit there, schedule-wise, but still, this is definitely outside of what would be normal. And I really appreciate you showing the support, showing the love. And to let everybody know, I do play in a couple of leagues with this guy. He is an absolute shark. I'm not going to get into the details because it's just too early on in my hosting career and I'm not ready to get roasted. But he is the man who's taken me for far and away the worst dynasty trade I've ever made. It's still going to work out. I'm going to win a championship this year as part of the result of that. But if you look at it 1-to-1, it was the worst deal I've ever made. So he knows what he's doing. And he also understands that Trey Lance of my San Francisco 49ers is rookie QB1. And that right there just elevates him. So if you have any final words, anything you want to plug, push, pitch, even just anything you want to throw in here, now's the time.
Well, like you said, you can find me at Fantasy and Frames. We've got a few articles over there. I've got one on Antonio Gibson, one on Chase Claypool, which is probably my favorite I've done. So if you enjoy the Devonta Smith one, go and find the rest of them. And like you said, there's tons of articles, tons of guys over there. All the writing is great. Dial Up the Blitz podcast. I co-host a podcast. A little bit more effing and blinding, a little bit more British. But
it's a great listen.
Yeah, it's not as professional as this, but it's just two guys talking ball and having a laugh. And I also, if you like a bet on the NFL, football betting advice is my website. Not much going on there at the moment, but when it comes to the NFL season, if you can bet in your state, head over to the website, come and see what we do, and hopefully win yourself some money.
That's actually something I should have brought up. I actually didn't realize Billy was involved in the gambling side of things as much until the Super Bowl of this last season. And he put together a hell of a write-up on the Super Bowl itself. California, we still cannot bet legally, so I was unable to take advantage of your advice. That sucks. Still have to go to Vegas to do what I need to do, but I do know I would have won some money had I been able to use some of your advice. So
yeah, we had a good game. We won some money during the Super Bowl, so yeah, it was good. Hopefully, we carry that on into next season.
And it's a great read as far as when it comes to gambling advice, betting picks. So much of it is there's a lot of blowhards out there, for lack of a better word. The style of your article very succinctly explained the logic behind the picks, which is something I particularly enjoy. And not just trust me, team X at given 4.5 points or whatever it may be. I mean, you really laid out the reasoning why it made exactly perfect sense, and that's something I really look for in my gambling content. So
I appreciate it.
You back it up. So again, thank you so much. Really appreciate you being here. Everybody, please check him out. Dial up the Blitz and Fantasy and Frames. It is Dynasty Bill. And with that, we are going to close this episode, and the Fantasy Boardroom is adjourned.